As you stand in Broad Street, casting a gaze on the old toll booth jail, look up, and there, the highestmost window, you'll see a darkened pane. These days it serves a quite mundane function. The room beyond is a stationery cupboard where they keep the till roll and the fax paper for the modern theatre below. But back in my day it served a far more practical and some would say entertaining purpose. It was the condemned cell, where those sentenced to hang by the court would spend their last 7 days and nights on God's green earth before being carried, weeping and wailing, to the gallows in Broad Street, where their necks would be stretched by the executioner of the hour. And the last man to enjoy the dubious comforts of that room was a farmer by trade. Alan Mayer was his name, 84 years old when he was sentenced to hang. Oh, I can tell, my little friend, from your face that you think to ooh and ah at the thought of a poor old soul being maltreated so. Well, think again. For Master Mayer was as black-hearted a devil as ever walked the streets of the old town. He'd beaten and abused his old wife Mary every day and night of the 38 years that they were wed, starved her, burned her, locked her in a trunk for hours on end when he had business in the town, for fear that if given the chance she would flee his unhappy home. And then he went too far. He caved the old woman's head in with his walking stick, claimed to the court in his defence that she had provoked him by making goo-goo eyes at pretty soldier boys. She was 88, she must have been a game old girl. Now, there was no doubt as to Master Mayer's guilt, so his trial and his conviction was a formality, and they cast him into the condemned cell, there to await his appointment with the executioner. But it was to be a long wait. This was 1842, the same year the toll booth had been declared by a government commission to be the worst prison in all of Britain. There was no longer an executioner on the public payroll, so the council left him there, hoping he would have the good manners befitting one of his great vintage, and drop dead and save the town the expense of slaying him. But like a miser clinging to his last penny, Master Mayer clung to life. 18 months passed, and embarrassed by the long delay, the councillors were finally forced into action. A new gallows was built by the Market Cross in Broad Street. The services of John Moffat, a Glasgow hangman, brought in to dispatch the old rogue. A date was finally set for his end. So it was. On the dull grey morn of October the 4th, 1843, too weak to stand, the frail old man had to be tied to the chair in which he had sat to enjoy his final breakfast. Carried over the heads of the jeering crowd, the country bumpkins come to the market day to see the fine entertainment of an old man's breath crushed from his withered bones. He was forced to stand, and after a few angry words at the crowd and the magistrates, the noose was looped around his frail neck. And a hush fell over the crowd. They listened as with bated breath the executioner stepped forward, grabbed the great oaken lever before him and jerked it backwards. As he did so, the trapdoor beneath the old murderer's feet sprang wide. He dropped, he jerked, he turned and twisted at the rope's end. His tongue swelled grotesquely in his mouth. His eyes seemed fit to pop from their very sockets. His skin took on a most peculiar purple pallor. It must have been a pretty sight, spoiled, though, by one small detail. For after 18 months near starved in the worst jail in Britain, the old man was little more than a bag of skin and bone. His body lacked the weight, you see, for the drop to snap his neck. Instead, he was simply left there, turning and twisting in the breeze, gagging, gasping for all the crowd to see. Now, these were superstitious country folk, as I say. They were convinced the only way a man so old and frail could have endured such a terrible torment was through satanic intervention. That old Horny himself, the Prince of Lies, had risen from the fiery pit of Hades, imbued the sinner with the strength he needed to break his bonds. And sure, if he could do that, it could only be a matter of moments before he turned his vengeful gaze on those that came to mock him in his last moments of mortal misery. In the end, Master Moffat took matters into his own hands. To prevent a riot, he leapt from the gallows frame, grabbed the old man's ankles, and swung upon his legs until his neck was heard to snap. Now there you'd think the tale would end, but things are never quite so simple in Stirling. You see, Master Mayor's family placed no claim upon his corpse. The church would not allow a murderer to be buried in holy ground. So the council was left with custody of his corpse. There being a new step laid by the jailhouse entrance, they simply put him in an old tea chest, lumbered it beneath that slab. It was a shame, they said, not to make good use of an available hole in the ground. But with that last act of disrespect, Master Mayor's legacy in Stirling was assured. Almost as soon as his bones were buried, strange occurrences were noted within that ancient place. Doors locked tight in dead of night were found wide open by the dawn's first light. Lanterns extinguished or discovered, blazing brightly, and a drear, unsettling chill was noted by those foolish enough to venture alone into that darkened upper chamber, the condemned cell which had been his home for so long. And then, quite recently, these strange occurrences ceased, just as renovations of the old building required his bones be moved. And the kirk relented its ruling and allowed him burial in consecrated earth, albeit in an unmarked plot, hidden away from the public path. The plot, my dear, upon which you now stand. Could it be true what they say of Master Mayor in this town, I wonder? Does his spirit lie in wait for innocent travellers upon the Crow Road twixt life and death, ever ready to snatch from you the precious breath of life you hold most dear? Probably not. But if somebody grabs your ankles as you go by, don't say you haven't been warned.